started. When I was a kid, I was always fascinated by space. I wanted to be an astronaut because those suits are super cool, and I thought to myself, I really like roller coasters. And if I could be aboard on the fastest roller coaster to the moon, rocket ship, that would be absolutely amazing. And space is just so, I mean, look at it. There's so much out there to explore. Galaxies and stars and planet systems. I wanted to know it all. If I could get out there and somehow travel through space, I'm going to find a way to do it, hopefully. So right now I put a pause on that. Maybe in the future I'll find myself in space. So I'm not studying the connections in space per se, but I am looking at connections inside the brain. Because our brain is a super tool. It allows us to do absolutely anything, and it allows us to be absolutely anything that we want to be. So I wanted to study it. Study the connections between cells in the brains that are called neurons, and also try to understand when those connections are a little bit mismatched or something's gone wrong. And so a little bit of what influenced me to study the brain. So I was always into reading and also world travel. And as a kid, I don't know if you guys know of Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. All right, cool, I see some nods. It used to be a really popular kids show when I was a kid, and I loved Jimmy Neutron and his friends. They would always adventure and try to problem solve and think of ways to save the world, basically, to save their community. So I wanted to, be able to use my brain to be able to solve problems at a small level, but then hopefully also at a global level, and potentially even at an intergalactic level. I draw a lot of my influence from my family. So that's my dad, my mom, my little sister Tiff. Actually, I'm wearing a kimono that she designed for me right here. I'm going to a Taylor Swift concert this weekend. And so it's like a cool kimono. Woo! She's really artistic and uses a lot of her right side of the brain. That's really artsy and artistic. I'm very left-sided, very mathematical and computational and science. So when we come together, there's a lot of magic that I create. And both of my parents, they immigrated from Colombia, so a Colombian family. They were chemical engineers back home. But my mom, coming here, opportunities sometimes are a little bit hard, speaking a different language, only having Spanish at the time, not having a college degree here. She started her own cleaning business, and my dad works at a mechanic shop. And they always instilled in us education and hard work, perseverance, creativity, passion. So, and this is us today. And no matter what we may be doing, whether I'm, playing dress up with my sister, being creative, or feeding the ducks with my grandmother up here, or looking at new tools. I'm kind of looking through my dad's mechanic tools to always really be engrossed and passionate about what we're doing in that moment. Something that's really important in my family, a tradition that we have, is going back to my grandfather's farm. We go to the farm and we explore the land. The idea is to walk in community. So this is my entire family. Well, not entire family. I come from a very, very big family. This is a portion of my family. I have over 30 first cousins. And to walk through the land and to feel connected with the land, to feel connected with each other, to feel connected with ourselves. And that idea of traveling and trying to find connectedness with the world really inspired me to try to find connectedness within myself and in the brain too. How do I think about things, and how does my brain itself work to actually connect all the pieces of the world? Here's another photo of us in the jungle exploring. This was a very interesting story. And so I have other families too. The Bolton Lab right here. This is us, my mentor, Dr. Bolton, that inspires me daily. And I'm here at Max Planck wearing one of our cool sweatshirts. And we study, again, how the brain, what happens when the brain doesn't work well? What happens to that communication between cells when something's gone wrong? And we use really cool techniques and tools to be able to look at the brain, be able to hopefully find areas where we can hopefully in some way find medicine or some type of therapy that can help to alleviate anything that's gone wrong. And the brain is so complex. There's all of these interlinked connections, and all regions of the brain are connected, and some may be more connected than others, some less connected. So I'm trying to literally map out what this looks like. It's super complex, but it's a creative project. And even though I'm not in space, I did go recently to Kennedy Space Center, and I was able to be an astronaut for a day, or at least kind of revisit what it's like to be an astronaut, what it's like to, look at some cool rocket parts. So I'm super excited to maybe revisit this in the future. And yeah, this is just a picture right here. We're celebrating Colombia. They made it to a later stage of the World Cup. If there's any big soccer fans out there. Yeah. Woo. And I really like to celebrate, not just, I'm American. I was born here. So we've got America, we've also got Colombia, and we've got the whole world. So thank you so much for your attention. And, any questions that you have, I hope that I can answer them. Thank you.
And we have some time for questions. So Ms. Von-Walter talked about how she wanted to be a scientist or an astronaut when she first got started, when she was your age. So think about what you want to be when you get older, and how she worked really, really hard going to school and more school and more school. And now she's a scientist working on her doctorate. So what kind of questions do you have for her? Maybe about the work that she does, or about the challenges. Do we have some questions out there? Why don't you come on up? Come be on our stage. All right, loud and proud.
What was it like driving through, going back and forth and stuff?
Driving through,
Driving back and forth to school, and then work.
Oh, okay, sure. Balancing it out, right? You gotta work and you have to go to school. How do you manage all of that?
yeah, that's a really, really good question. Actually, so I didn't get a car until I was an undergrad. So when I came home from Cornell, I didn't need a car in Cornell, but when I came home and started at FAU, I was with my parents and had to drive an hour each way every single day. So it was a long commute, but when it's worth it, you just kind of go for it. And I would listen to some cool podcasts and music and sing along. So you find ways, sometimes even in the hard work, to find that work really worthwhile, and to find ways to just feel more immersed in the experience. And now my commute is a lot shorter, but I definitely like to balance, just to speak to your question, maybe expand a little bit. So my commute is shorter, but I like to balance my day with yoga. I like to balance my day with a little bit of reading, and I like to come home and cook with my family. And at work, work are long hours, so even there, I find time to take some breaks. We have this room called the relaxation room, where we can go and sit down and relax and just take a pause, because the day can be, pretty long and sometimes exhausting. So thank you for your question.
All right, we have our next question here. Why don't you come on up? Loud and proud in the microphone.
What do you do each day?
Thank you so much. So every day looks a little different. And I think that's the cool thing about being a researcher. You can kind of make your own schedule. So there's a lot of flexibility. But for the most part, I work directly with the brain, and I work directly with looking at cells, how they literally communicate with each other. So imagine I'm a cell and you're a cell, right? And we're communicating. And maybe there's a problem with the communication. So I have to figure out, why is there a problem? So I use some cool tools to be able to understand how that happens. And honestly, sometimes the tools are a little bit too advanced for me to understand. I'm still learning that, right? I'm still in the phase of learning. So that's kind of what I do.
So I know the tools that I use for my job. I use paper, I use pen, I use my computer, I use AI sometimes. What kind of tools do you use for your job?
Short and big. So we use microscopes in particular, because we work with small, the brain is so tiny, right? And tinier than the brain are the cells. Cells are small units of life, the smallest unit of life, actually. And we need microscopes to be able to expand that image, right? So under the microscope, We can see exactly what the cell looks like. We're able to then use like these, in particular, I use these small little tools that can record from the cell, and it can read its electrical activity. So I use some fancy computer programs too, where I see a bunch of like squiggles and squaggles, and sometimes it's noise, and sometimes it's actual information that I'm able to put together and kind of make a story out of.
Sounds like you have some really cool tools that you work with.
Thank you.
What is your hardest part of your job?
So in science, another thing too, is that it's not uncommon for a lot of the time, it's not all the time, but there's a great amount of time where things don't always go right. And there's not always an answer to the question, an immediate answer to the question that you're trying to answer. A lot of the time, you do something, you get a result, and you have a million more questions. So it's hard sometimes you see something, you don't get the result that you want, and you wonder, oh my goodness, like how much more time? So patience is really important. It's a patience a virtue to be able to start cultivating, because I mean, life in general, you wanting to have patience or being able to grow patience is incredibly important. So trying to stay in the game, trying to stay motivated. I talk a lot to my friends at work, to my mentors, and sometimes just taking a step back, taking a deep breath, it just allows me to get a clearer picture. And so, to keep going.
Excellent, thank you. We have another question from the audience here.
What is the hardest, what skill do you need for your job?
Right. So many different skills for sure. Trying to think, the one that just pops into my head, and I was actually talking about this with some friends yesterday, curiosity. Just having that curiosity, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You don't have to know really a whole lot. I don't know a whole lot. I'm always learning. I like to think that I'm still a baby in this whole journey, but I'm curious. I'm highly curious, and I'm observant too. Observing the world around me, observing each other, observing things in your surroundings, and asking yourself, how does that work? How can I understand a little bit more about it? So think about some of the things that you guys are interested in, and maybe following that train of thought, see where it leads you.
So be curious and be observant. Some great advice for our students, our future scientists.
What's the most fascinating thing about the brain?
You might have a long list, but maybe you could just give us your top two.
Oh my goodness. I would say, besides the fact that there's that one picture, the brain doesn't actually look like this, but that would be kind of cool. All the colors would be fascinating. But the fact that it's just so connected, it is like a web. Like imagine like a spider web, all the intricate details, and you have different points connecting to each other. And I look at the brain the way that I like to look at society and look at life, how we can all connect with each other. And sometimes different connections are a little bit harder than others, but we work at it. And the really cool part is that the brain is nonstop. There's always activity in the brain. We even measure the brain when we're sleeping, and the brain is still active. So the activity in the brain fascinates me. The variety and activity in the brain absolutely fascinates me. And also, even when the brain isn't working, it tries to find a way to compensate, to find connections around the thing that's wrong, so that it can try to make it right. Your body's always trying to keep you alive, to keep you healthy, to keep you, just thinking. And yeah.
Wonderful. We got a question here. This one's a personal question.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead.
What's your favorite planet to observe?
I really love Saturn because I think Saturn's rings are really cool. And it's definitely a planet too that is way out there. And Saturn is just the rings, because I always thought it'd be cool to like ride on the rings, like a giant sort of loop-de-loop slide, and they're colorful, and it's a big gaseous planet. But all of them really are my favorite. I still think Pluto's a planet. I'm not sure if it was reinstated into the planetary system, but I think Pluto's still a planet.
I know you spend a lot of time on brain research, but do you research and study the solar system?
I don't actually. When I was sitting with myself, I just trying to remember, like astronaut was the first thing that popped into mind. The last time I studied the solar system was when I was at Cornell. I took an intro to astronomy course, and that was really cool because it wasn't in my required coursework, but I thought this would be pretty interesting. So we studied the solar system. It's been, I think, a decade, so a lot of the information has left my brain. That's why we got to use our brains, right? Information that's not used can be lost.
What is the best part of your job?
The best part of my job is being able to come in, and at this point, I've been working at Max Planck for about 5 years. So when I say Max Planck is my family, it's my family. And the people that I'm able to, when I walk in and I get to say hi to Erica or hi to Lance, their security guard, just like, hey Lance, how's it going? Go upstairs, grab some coffee from a fancy coffee machine, and then see super fancy, and walk through the halls, and immediately I see busyness and activity. I see my colleagues walking through on their way to different rooms to do experiments. Sometimes we'll stop each other in the hallway and share just words of wisdom and encouragement. Then getting to stop into my mentor lab. Hey, Dr. Bolton, what are we doing today? Her and I work really closely, so that's also really exciting. So for me, the most exciting thing is the community building aspect. The science is really cool too, don't get me wrong. Like getting to discover something new, like we are the only ones working on a particular problem, and getting to find the answer to that and then get to share it with the world is super exciting. So yes.
Speaking of family, one of our friends here has a question for you.
Do you have any special holidays or traditions?
Thank you. No particular, well, growing up, my mother was really big into hosting like Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we'd always have, just like we see here, like we'd have like little dinner parties with friends and family, and so that was really big. As we got a little bit older, we kind of ventured off, and family gets kind of busy. So holidays are a little bit smaller, but a big tradition in our family, or for me that's important, is hiking. I'm a big hiker. Even here in the States, I've hiked a lot through North Carolina. A goal of mine is to go through California and Utah. I've gone hiking in Colombia. My grandfather has over 800 acres of land, and so I try to put that in perspective even for myself. It's a lot of land, and it's up in the mountains, so we're able to explore, and I think that's the tradition, to just kind of be in family and walking around and exploring the land.
Excellent. We had a customer. You want to come on up? The microphone.
Have you ever worked on a human brain?
On my own brain, not actually. Not in a scientific setting, no. But it would be interesting to. I'm not sure if we can. I have not worked on a human brain, but I am obviously a lot of the questions, maybe not so obviously, but a lot of the things we do in research, we do so that we can then study these changes of these things in the human brain. So we work with other models to be able to first find the answer, and then hopefully translate that to the human mind, to human disorders of the mind that might happen. But yes, that'd be very interesting. I'm sure, we're kind of heading that direction and try to do it in a very holistic way.
Another question here from our audience.
What was your biggest challenge in life?
I love that question. So when I was young, for the most part, I was always very curious and a pretty good learner because I'm very observant. And I'd like to say things came pretty naturally to me. School came very naturally to me. I did well in school throughout K through 12. But then when I went to college, things were a little bit tough. I missed home. It was a different environment. I was all the way in New York, in the middle of nowhere, New York. And I saw all around me these super high achievers, and it scared me. I felt a little bit like a really small fish in a giant ocean. And for a while, I kind of doubted myself. I doubted my abilities as a scientist and really just as a person sometimes to do things. So being able to overcome that, right, I took a step back and I came home, and coming home awarded me so many blessings because I had help, right? I had help from family, I had help from friends, from my immediate community that I absolutely love. I adore Palm Beach County. And so taking that step back and being able to sort of regroup and take my time, like, okay, what is it that I really want to do? Other people say, do this, do that, be this, be that. But what does Carolyn want to do? What does she want to create? What does she want to aspire to be? So taking that time, you guys are young and you guys are so much ahead of me. I am excited for you. Take your time to write down the things that motivate you and excite you, to share them with your friends and your family. And to look at yourself in the mirror too, like, you got it.